Good afternoon, ladies. How are you doing?
Afternoon, sir. All good.
I'm surprised that you're actually at class. It's a beautiful day to go to the beach. Probably the last one that we're going to get. Or have the weekend been well, long enough for you to satisfy all your social needs? Or are you at the beach basically just doing the online course? Oh, no, yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. Right, let's see. Let's give ourselves another minute or so just to ensure that with three different watches and different, um, I know I work with three different watches. It can sometimes be a challenge because I'm not sure which one is the most accurate one, so I'll just go for the middle. It is 20 past, so we can start. It's probably just going to be the five of us then today at this point. And we'll admit whoever else joins us later as it happens. Right. Everybody, everybody good with being back? You know what? The only good, there's a good thing about I hate, to be honest with you, I hate long weekends. I'll be very honest with you. I think I've expressed previously that I'm not a very good I'm not very good with holidays. I do know that we need holidays, and we can't just burn the candle on both ends all the time. But it sort of I feel it breaks my speed. But then on the other hand, it's just maybe that change in routine, the fact that we can relax a bit. You don't really have to get up for that 8 o'clock Zoom session. So there's just um, that awareness of okay, it's actually time is a bit easier. While we're at that, we do realize this is the first week of three in a row that we only have going to have 4 days. Yep. This week is Tuesday to Thursday to Friday. Next week, as Tanika joins us as well. Next week, it's Monday to Thursday because Friday is Good Friday, start of Easter weekend, and the Monday of the following week is a public holiday, and that takes us into the first week in April already, and the third week in a row of only 4 days. It doesn't impact on us that much. We only lose the yesterday's class and then the one on Easter Monday, the 5th of April. That's the only dates that really affect us. But I looked at the timetable over the weekends, and it's not going to impact on us having to speed up at some point to catch up. Everything is good. So while we're on that subject, interestingly enough, I read an article on internet over the weekend. Uh, the management philosophy of working for 4 days instead of five and having 3 days off has been very popular, and I think maybe because of the culture initially, or that was the thought. Um, in when it was applied in Japan, and now from the 1st of April, Spain, 32 of the top companies in Spain are also going to follow that approach. You're going to work for 4 days and you have 3 days off. You're still going to get paid for 5 days because the philosophy basically is based on the principles that if people know they've got an extra day off and they're getting paid for that extra day off, they will work harder. They'll be more productive. And I know that in Japan, it was the case that the work that people normally did in 5 days, they completed in four because they know they only had 4 days to complete it, and they still got paid for five. So it's a win-win. What do you think about that? How would that fly? I mean, you guys are not in part of the labor market yet. You're not working full time, but you think that's something that will go down well? I mean, where do you see the challenges? Where do you see the positives? I'd like some ideas from you. Anybody? What do you think? You think it's going to work? You think it will work in our country?
I think it would work. So, and it would also help with mental health and stuff, like in the office, to have just a little bit longer of a break.
Yeah, and I think also what a lot of people look at it initially, and they just look at the 4-3 split, and they think, okay, right, 4 days, 3. I mean, is it going to every Monday off now, or is it every Friday off now? You know what? If I think there's no point if everybody does this, because then on your off day, what are you going to do? If the schools are closed. On either Monday or Friday, or only open for 4 days in a week, what do the people do when they actually have an off day? Because if they have an off day, then everybody's off. Right? It doesn't work. So I think for something like this to work, you're probably going to have a staggered kind of week. Some businesses, I think, would probably bring in more people on shifts, because they will have to stay open for 7 days. Although you'll probably work for 4 days and have 3 days off, it doesn't mean that your week starts on a Monday. It might mean that it starts on a Wednesday, and it runs through to the Saturday, and then you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. So the long and the short of it is, it's basically a 4-day work week, regardless of how it is staggered. But I think people. I don't think we realize, what our capacity is, that we can actually work a bit harder. I know for a fact, if I know I've got an extra day off, I'll work harder for the days that I do work. That's quite simple. I prefer to have that extra day off. And yeah, very importantly, how do we spend that time off? There's no point in having the day off and then sitting at home in front of your on your tablet or on your laptop all the time, because then it sort of defeats the purpose. However, it might be that that people have an extra day so they can prepare, so they don't have to prepare during the week itself. I'm looking at myself as a lecturer. If I have a day that I can prepare my whole week, it's actually going to be beneficial. So maybe, yeah, it depends on how people use those days, but I will definitely go for something like that. I'm not sure exactly if a third world country like South Africa is ready for something like that. It requires a lot of discipline. But anyway, it's just an idea. I look forward to the outcome of this particular exercise that they're going to start in Spain in April. On another subject, before we start with today's chapter, which is chapter 5, is I had an opportunity to go through all your self-assessment class test 1. I didn't have any serious issues. I think it was straightforward. I can compliment some of you. I think the context, the body itself of the essay wasn't a challenge, because that's information that is straight from the textbook. Those pages 6 to 10. All the different characteristics that differentiate between products and services, that was quite clear. In some cases, I thought maybe you could have embroidered a bit more by providing an example that applies to the dark spa, as I call it. But introduction, all of you actually nailed the introduction. The introduction was good for me because it stated what the business is. Again, it's only reflecting and repeating information that's there already, but it was well structured. Where we can still probably put extra work in, and I'm generalizing now, I'm not being specific with any particular individual, is maybe the conclusion, where I think we can probably be I would like a bit more detail. It's almost like stating the topic of the essay again, and then concluding and making recommendations. but again, we'll work on that, and that's why we have our self-assessment activities like last test. But in general, I was quite happy, and yeah, for a first class test, it was all good. Um, I'll give you individual feedback on a different platform sometime during the next week. Um, Chapter 5 puts us right in front of quite a challenging exercise for service providers, and that is the challenge of developing or designing a new service, maybe an addition to what you are currently offering as a service provider, maybe entering into a new market. And it is challenging on a number of levels, and definitely more challenging than actually designing a new product, because it's quite simple. If you want to try a new recipe, for instance, for baking a cake or scones or muffins or whatever, you can bake it, you follow the instructions, or you follow a new specific recipe, and you have an end product, and you can give it to a customer, and the customer can taste it and they can say, oh no, this is awful, or this is great. So it's easier to design a new product for a business, but a new service slightly more challenging, because it requires a bit of creativity, and that's, I think, where our greatest challenge lies. We often have great ideas, but we do not have enough ideas. I think I said way back in the first year in marketing, it is very important, and one of my lecturers I had at Varsity, when I attended his marketing sessions, left something with me that I've always remembered. And he says that it's very important to remember that everybody is always telling you to find a gap in the market, because that's where you can actually then, or that's where you'll find clients. But it's not always that obvious. There's not always necessarily a market in the gap. There might be a reason why there's a gap in the market, because there's no need for a particular product or service, and that's why there is a gap. If proper research is done, then yes, obviously you will be able to find enough people in that gap in the market that will support your service or buy your product, and then yes, you have to fill that gap. But it is challenging in general to design even a new product, and even more so for the services industry, purely because, well, firstly, because of the intangible nature of services, and then also because there's not as many service alternatives or service providers as alternative choices for consumers than there would be for products necessarily. Sometimes a product can be slightly different than the other, maybe just in coloring, in taste, or packaging. Those subtleties are not as evident in the services industry, because there are not enough service providers in all industries to ensure that those kind of subtle changes can actually result in being more effective or growing your market share or your profitability. There are two stages, however, that if we do follow that, we'll get closer to being successful in our attempts to design a new service, and that is obviously the planning of the service itself, and then the implementation of the concept. A very clever marketer once said, it's very easy to get ideas and to be creative and find new ideas. It's difficult to find the right idea. A good starting point, however, to get the right idea or right creative idea that might result in a new product or a new service, is that we must get many ideas first. I think very often a rookie mistake that is made by marketers is that they spend too much time and effort on one particular concept instead of having 5 or 6 different options to choose from. If you're going to have 10 ideas, I'm pretty sure that one of those ideas would be a great idea. If you only have one idea, the chances are vastly reduced that that specific idea is going to be your um, the chicken who lays the golden egg. So a process is obviously necessary. And in this particular chapter, we'll be focusing on 2 specific tools that is commonly used in our planning and designing of the concept, and that is the blueprinting, the services blueprinting, and then obviously also the deployment of the quality function. We'll get to that during the course of this particular module, but those are 2 tools that will not guarantee, but will improve your chances of your new design or service design being a successful one. Right. Some of the other challenges that I haven't addressed up to now as to why it is so difficult to design a new service is that it's very difficult to standardize. It's difficult to standardize because there's a high level of involvement, of human involvement. It's the service provider, and we can here use an example of, for instance, the hairdresser again. And the hairdresser as the service provider might come up with a new idea that they want to add to the services that they already offer. And then sometimes, because we do not know the mental condition or the mood, so to speak, of the customer when they arrive. So maybe this new idea that we add to our service didn't go down well on a particular day with that particular customer because it was they weren't in the right mood to be, or very acceptable mood to see the value of the added service. And because of that, which you cannot control, you don't know the customer. All you know is that the customer has booked a 3 o'clock hair appointment. You know the customer because they've been with you before, but you do not know in what state of mind are they going to arrive. Maybe there was a fender bender on the way. Maybe it was a bad day at the office. Maybe the kids are driving her crazy. Maybe the person's didn't have a good night's rest. There are so many reasons that can affect your mood when you walk in for the hair for the hair appointment, and where it could initially have been scheduled as a sort of an hour private time for yourself, where you treat yourself and you know you're going to get a nice head massage as well, and you're going to walk out of there and you're going to feel like a new person. It can result in not being there, not being that session because of what has happened in your particular day. You feel rushed. I mean, it's almost like an interruption in your day. Okay, right, just cut my hair so I can go because I'm already behind in what I had to do today, kind of thing. So it's very difficult to determine that in advance, and as a result of that, it makes it very difficult when you come up with new ideas and you add new ideas to actually always have a positive response. And that can be very it can leave the service provider very dejected with, okay, right, I'm not going to try new things because, I mean, nobody actually, it doesn't appear as if they actually enjoy it. So it is difficult because of the fact that we're in the services industry where the human element is very present and uncontrollable. Right. Some of the risks that we can take if we look at our service design. When we're designing a new service, it is very difficult. It's very important that we do not just express it. We sit down with our staff and say, right, this is a new idea we're going to try, and you explain it to them. I mean, it's just your staff sitting in front of you and listening to a chat, and after 5 minutes, they might be on their phones or looking out the window, not really paying attention. So it's very difficult if you only limit yourself when you try and get a buy-in from your staff on new ideas. If you just express yourself in words. It's as we know that we learn better if we see something. Our visual senses are more receptive, I think, than these two ornaments that we find next to our heads, which we call ears. So listening, we're not very good at listening, especially if the presentation is not an exciting one. And what usually makes something exciting is the visual effects. Just put yourself in a situation, would you rather read the book or would you rather watch the Netflix of the flick that was made by Netflix on the book itself? I know that all of us would prefer to rather watch the movie than read the book. It's going to take us an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to watch the movie. If there's nice visuals and well-known celebrities or actors in the movie, then even more so. But then, how long it's going to take you to read the book? So we're all caught up in the in the 21st century where everything needs to be instantaneous. Okay, right. So it's going to take me 3 days to read this book if I read 5 hours a day, and I really don't have the time, and that's usually the excuse. So I'd much rather watch the movie. My son was like that. He initially had all great ideas with this history assignment he's going to do, grade 11 history assignment he's going to do, and then eventually says, Dad, I went online and I just downloaded the movie that was made on that particular individual, and yeah, I've got all the information I need. So yes, that's how we are. We don't read as much as we should, and therefore it is important when you do your initial design or concept, where you share your concept or new idea with everybody that will be involved, in designing it, and then also secondly in delivering it. We can oversimplify things if we just stick to words. And then obviously the subjectivity. Some people, based on their own experiences, become biased, and that is also a potential risk that you're running when you start a new service design. Any questions at this point from everybody? You all good? You all still awake?
All good, sir.
All good. Always good to hear. Right. When we design a new service, and I think it's also the case with a new product, don't just do it because you have the time and the money to do it. Make sure that you answer that question that is so important, and that is, what is the purpose? Why? What's our intention? What's our objective? If we can refer back to the 5 steps in the previous chapters. What's our objective? Why do we want to add an additional attribute to the services we offer already? Is it because there were many requests from our customers for that specific attribute to be added? Maybe you add something to your menu if you're a restaurant. Remember, restaurants are also services. They are hybrid services because they have tangible products like the food you're going to eat and the drinks you're going to drink, but it's seen as a service because you don't prepare the food yourself. You actually want to be treated, you want to be serviced, and as a result of that, you are prepared to pay a bit more for something that would have cost you half the price to make at home. Maybe you didn't have the time, maybe you were just not in the mood to do it, maybe you're too lazy, and therefore you go into the restaurant and they have added something new to the menu, and it is actually often people try new things. People are curious. But what is the purpose for you as the owner of the restaurant for adding that extra product maybe or item on your menu? Is it going to sell more products? Is it going to enhance the particular experience at the restaurant? maybe you opened up a section of the restaurant um, for live music, for instance. It could be. Maybe that was requested by some of the customers. So is that necessarily going to draw more customers to your business? Because at the end of the day, regardless of you are in the business of selling products or if you're a service provider offering services, the bottom line is that you're not a charity and you need to make a profit. In other words, you need to sell more, deliver a better quality than your competitors. If you don't sell more, you will actually have to save on your expenses if you want to have a better result. Um, Steve Harvey was on radio this morning as one of doing one of his short speeches on just trying to get people motivated. And he said something that I think we all know. If you want extraordinary results, you cannot just do ordinary things. You have to do extraordinary things. If we are just going to do the same and do it slightly better, we're not necessarily going to have that wow experience that we want. So we have to do something extraordinary if we want extraordinary results. Starting point is, what's the purpose? What's the purpose in line with what the strategy and the mission and the vision of the business is? Not every business is chasing high volumes, and especially in the service industry, is chasing high volumes of customers. They want to offer a higher quality of product, as we've seen from chapter 2, the quality of the service. Now, we'll have to ask ourselves a few questions, and one of the most important ones is also to determine if the service that you are thinking of adding to your bouquet that you as a service provider already offers, is that classified as a special group of service? Is there maybe an existing service, similar service already? You just want to bring a new take on it? Because if it is, it will help you a great deal, because then your service design doesn't start from scratch where it's a total new idea and you have no information on it. Yeah, somebody else have tried it already. Maybe somebody else or one of your competitors are doing it at the moment. You just think you can do it much better. So it's a tweaking of on an existing service, and that is probably a good starting point. But again, it's up to every service provider. But if that is the case, use that information that exists already. Your service dimensions that you to classify services is threefold. Firstly, it could be equipment based or it could be people based. It's often also used the 2x2 matrix, where your low customer contact and high customer contact is contrasted against your low customization and high customization. And then we also have a three-dimensional classification where customization, the degree of integration, and the degree of labor intensity are the three components that we include. What we've seen from these three different dimensions is that the common theme throughout all three of them is that there's the nature as well as the extent of your customer contact. In other words, the contact between the customer and the service provider sort of determines a great deal as to the design of our new service. Right, we've got 10 minutes to go before the session ends, and then we can just link up again. Just my normal reminder to you. The one aspect I think that is very often not addressed correctly when designing a new service is that we've got to remember that in any service industry, or in the service industry, in every service provider in the industry have backroom people and or back office people, and they actually have front office people or activities. Um, they all work differently, and obviously, if we refer back to the previous slide, your front office activities and the people working in the front office are going to have more direct contact with the customer. The hairdresser in a hair salon is front office. That's the person who has all the tools and skills to perform that particular service. But the back office very often refers to the people who need to put in the orders for the products, um, the conditioner, the shampoos that the salon uses, who takes the bookings, who does the admin, make the books balance at the end of the day. Those are all people who are not necessarily directly in contact with the customer when the customer is receiving that particular service. They are all part of the delivery, because if a particular shampoo or conditioner is not in stock, or it hasn't been ordered, and as a result of that, there's nothing in stock when the customer comes for the session, it's going to impact on the quality of the service that the customer receives. Likewise, with if there's a stuff up with the reservations or the bookings, for instance, there's one thing that you don't want, and that's a movie that my son watched and I walked in over the weekend again, and that's Mum's Night Out, where they've been anticipating this blissful experience without the kids and the family and everything, and it's just these four girls out. And then when they got to the restaurant, the booking was stuffed up. And the booking was stuffed up, and this is where my son and I got into the conversation, because I said to him, next weekend is Easter week. It's Easter. He says, no, it's not next weekend. Next weekend is the following week. It's the weekend coming up now. That's next weekend. And that's, I think, in the movie, it also came out that was the reason for the confusion. If I say the next weekend, what do I mean? If I say to you now, next weekend is a long weekend, does it mean this weekend coming now with Friday, a couple of days from now? Or is it the weekend after this weekend? Is this weekend ahead of us this weekend, and the one after that the following weekend? What's your take on that? I mean, I would like to know what you think, because I mean, is the coming weekend this weekend?
Yes.
And then the weekend after this weekend, in other words, the weekend of the second,
next weekend,
is next weekend. Okay. Can you understand why that can be confusing? Because some people can say, but no, you said next weekend. No, next weekend is the next weekend. No, it's actually this weekend. So it can be, and as a result of that, just to simplify this example, it is that can result in a reservation or a booking that was done incorrectly, because your interpretation as backroom or back office employee was different to what the customer meant. So we need to, obviously, if something like that happens, when we do our staff training, we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that they understand. And everybody out there will also be different. It could be that the lady making the reservation or the person making the reservation also thought that the next weekend is the following weekend. So to ensure that when you train your staff to address issues like that, is make sure that you don't give them scripts, just give them questions to ask. In other words, ma'am, if I just want to confirm your booking. Your booking is for next weekend, and next weekend would be Saturday, the 3rd of April. Now, if somebody says, no, next weekend means now, in other words, I'm talking about the 26th or 27th of April, March, then by asking that question, you're avoiding this entire misunderstanding or potential misunderstanding. So that's why it's very important to ensure that when you organize and coordinate your activities of your front office and your back office employees, that you integrate that those activities, that they're all on the same page. You don't want somebody who's sitting in an office dealing with all the customer complaints, not being aware of what happens at the front, where you actually are confronted by the customers. So they also need to be on the same page. You can't just do if there's a confrontation with a customer, promise something that you cannot deliver. Because once that person now phones back, the person at the back says, no, that's not our policy, but no, you said it was our policy. So very important to coordinate and integrate the activities of the front and the back office employees, especially because some of them are going to be in contact with the customer and some of them won't. Right. Other aspects that make it very demanding to design a service, they're all listed there. You can go through them in your textbooks as well. I think they're on page 122. I'm just going to look at some of them, but yeah, you can read through all of them. Again, I'm not going to ask you an essay question to name the 10 or 9 challenges that affect your service design. But the ones that is important is, for instance, location. The choice of where the service is delivered, from what point the service is delivered, is extremely important. I think by now there's a sort of a standard design of new shopping complexes, depending on who your main tenant is. If it's a shopping center where there's a Pick and Pay or a Spar, that's the anchor tenant, you'll find that your line shops that you pass on the way to the main entrance. Because remember, in a number of days, your parents will tell you, and I can vouch for that because I'm probably the age of your parents, is that shopping malls 20, 30 years ago, the entrance was not you having to walk through the mall to get to. There was, nowadays, you'll find that a Pick and Pay or Spar, there's no outside entrance. You have to walk past a couple of shops. You enter the mall's main entrance, and then you go to the shop that you want to go to, but you pass along the way on a number of different shops. And there's always a specific line. You can see that when there's a Pick and Pay, for instance, there's the chances of a Crazy Store and the Clicks being close by is very high. It's almost as if the same sort of line tenants line up because they know that it improves the value of it improves the value of the experience of the customer, especially if they specialize in a specific field or product range or service that will not be offered by the main anchor tenant. So your location is important, and obviously part of the location is the safety. Will your vehicle still be there when you come back from your appointment? Do you feel safe? Is there sufficient parking, accessibility for people with disabilities, for people with small children? All of these things are important. Part of the layout, we'll look at it later on in other chapters. I think chapter 9, when we're focusing on specifically the customer. But you can read through all of those. You can read through all of those factors that's listed on page 122. I'm not going to go through them one by one.